What's going on, everyone? Onyx Spade here, and today I'm going to be giving you another episode of Gaming Versus. And today on Gaming Versus, I want to recollect on a subject that I did, I'd say my first episode of Gaming Versus, which is where I was talking about Duke Nukem Forever versus Duke Nukem Forever, the mod that was made, which, you know, the mod was just plain amazing. I love the experience. Everyone knows that I'm also a Duke Nukem fan. I love Duke Nukem, you know, King of the Mountain, okay? But in this one in particular, in this episode, I'm going to be going back to my roots of Duke Nukem, but I'm going to talk about two games that were like the yin and yang of Duke Nukem. And one of the games for the yin and yang is considered my favorite Duke Nukem game. But then the yang of this is my second favorite Duke Nukem game. Now, these two games I'm going to be comparing in Gaming Versus is basically Duke Nukem 3D versus Duke Nukem 64. Now, Duke Nukem 3D and Duke Nukem 64 is kind of like, I would say the Atari Jaguar version of Doom versus the PC version of Doom. So, first thing, I have a little list here on my phone that I wrote because for some reason I can't look upon the list that I wrote on my computer for this episode because I made a list of stuff. So I decided to take a picture of the list that I wrote from my experiences and explain them to you. So, when it comes to, you know, the Duke Nukem games, let's first talk about Duke Nukem 64. Now, Duke Nukem 64 is in its own category of good to me. It's not as good as Duke Nukem 3D, but almost there, while Duke Nukem 3D, by a small percentage, is better than Duke Nukem 64. That's why these two games in particular are my favorite Duke Nukem games, but there's some things I don't like about Duke Nukem 3D that Duke Nukem 64 has, and there's some stuff from Duke Nukem 64 that I don't like that Duke Nukem 3D has. Like I said, they're yin and yang, good and bad, but in this case, very good versus okay good. So, when it comes to Duke Nukem 64, you know, it had the split screen multiplayer mode. And when I was a kid, I used to do the multiplayer mode with some of my friends. One of them is a guy that I will only talk about as named King. Me and King, my friend, we used to play Duke Nukem 64 on a daily basis when we were younger. And, you know, it was always a tie between who would really be the badass in the multiplayer mode. Now, like I said, Duke Nukem 64 had a multiplayer mode. Duke Nukem 3D did not. Then, also at the same time, Duke Nukem 64 had a fixed perspective. Fixed perspective is basically buildings, you know, don't look so wrong when you look up them or down them. Basically, it had more of a realistic feel of approach versus Duke Nukem 3D, where it was, well, in the name, it's 3D. Plus, when you did the co-op mode, you had a split screen for that. So that was actually pretty cool. Now, the things that I didn't like about Duke Nukem 64. One of the main things I'm going to talk about right this second, and this is where my little example of PC Doom versus Atari Jaguar Doom will come into play. Duke Nukem 64 did not have any in-game music. I'm dead serious. Just like the Atari Jaguar version of Doom, best port of Doom, had no music. Duke Nukem 64, best port to me of Duke Nukem on the 64, no music. And to me, in-game music is extremely important when it comes to playing a game. It just revs you up like a Harley, so you can go out there, slaughter some aliens, and go save the babes. That's how it goes. Also, I look at the small things when it comes to games. I do. And when it comes to NES, it's not always about the graphics. Do they really use the 255, the 256 bits of memory for their cartridge? Or do they just, mess with you? But in this particular case, I look for certain graphic designs that'll give you a feel of wow when you play a game. Duke Nukem 3D, when you did the space levels, you could see stars in the sky. Duke Nukem 64 didn't have no stars in the sky. Moving on. Okay. Duke Nukem 3D had what I call the quick boot function, where basically you could, quickly kick an enemy if they get a little bit too near. Duke Nukem 64 removed that function from the game. And I thought that was very asinine, But another main thing that set Duke Nukem 64 apart from Duke Nukem 3D, aside from there was no in-game music, was no mirrors. There was no mirrors. Basically you couldn't look in the mirror and be like, oh, I'm looking good. They didn't. I know it's something small, guys, but it's about Duke Nukem and the one-liners. You wanted to see what one-liners he would do depending on the circumstances. So basically just the general changes that, Duke Nukem 64 basically had done, and I got the list right here, because I couldn't look at my dang list that I made, was basically Duke Nukem 64. It had no music. It had an improved engine, certain effects like smoke and transparencies, explosions, the plasma cannon, hell yes, the plasma cannon, and the better colored lighting, which most N64 games in that era actually had. So basically, Duke Nukem 64 was basically the better graphic version of Duke Nukem 3D. Problem is, Duke Nukem 64, well, it had no paralleled skies, okay? Basically, the PC game had cityscapes, star fields, beaches, all that. That was all that, Duke Nukem 3D actually had. Duke Nukem 64 doesn't. The skies and the space levels, for example, they're plain black. The reason for this is not really known to me. I could not find an answer for it. It was just like that, just the way it is. I honestly don't know. But given that I've never seen any paralleling in the other N64 games either, I mean, there's a distinct possibility that N64 is not set up to handle paralleling, because when I played a lot of N64 games when I was, a little tater tot, because, I was a kid once. I'm still not a kid. I could never find games that had paralleled skies. Like, it didn't really look like a sky. It just looked like a blank palette. I could never find anything like that. Hell, not even in Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. I mean, I couldn't even find paralleled skies in that. What the hell? I don't know. Also at the same time, Duke Nukem 64 mixes in enemies and weaponry from the original PC version, also known as the Atomic Edition, and some N64 specific stuff. Basically, they had an added weapon scheme. And I actually enjoyed that for the N64. And basically, for example, even it lacks the weapons from the PC version like the Ripper, the RPG, the Devastator, and the Flamethrower, but it had other stuff with it. Basically, it took out those main weapons that, to me, defined the Duke Nukem franchise, and they added in their own weapons for some odd reason. I don't know. I guess it was just like a retelling of the Duke Nukem story. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. And like I said, the split screen Duke match and the co-op modes were only 64 only. The N64 version has no mirror effects, and the PC version has, circular trains when the N64 version does not. So basically, in a nutshell, what I'm trying to give you guys is I will always be a full Duke Nukem 3D lover. Because it was a Duke Nukem game. It felt like a Duke Nukem game. N64 Duke Nukem felt like a retelling of that actual story, but with some changes, basically. Like I said, Duke Nukem 3D will always be my favorite Duke Nukem game, but by a small percentage. Because my number 2 will always be Duke Nukem 64. Plus, for some odd reason, it's very, very hard to record Duke Nukem 64 with my recording software, so it may be a while before I even do Duke Nukem 64, because I really want to do Duke Nukem 64. I really want to do that. But, my recording software doesn't seem to want to act right when it comes to that. Plus, for some odd reason, I remember back in the day when I tried to upload Duke Nukem 3D and Duke Nukem 64 on my older channel, not my channel that I still have on YouTube besides this one. I had another channel before it, and I was originally going to try and, back in that day, upload Duke Nukem 64 and then Duke Nukem 3D, but YouTube was not accepting me doing Duke Nukem 64, but for some odd reason let me upload my Duke Nukem 3D. So it was kind of weird, I've had subscribers ask me, oh, you're going to play Duke Nukem 64? Spade, do Duke Nukem 64. Duke Nukem 64, 64, 64. And I'm like, I'm trying. I mean, YouTube let me get away with doing Duke Nukem 3D. That was fun. Like back in the day, Duke Nukem 3D wouldn't upload on my channel. Now I actually have it on my old channel. So that's a good thing. I was able to put a Duke Nukem game up there aside from the Duke Nukem 2013 mod, which is a piece of genius work. I love it. I loved it. Because for some reason, Duke Nukem Forever 2013 mod, it was basically the combination that I was looking for. It was basically all the great stuff from Duke Nukem 3D combined with Duke Nukem 64. That right there, the Duke Nukem Forever 2013 mod, is considered the combined work of Duke Nukem 64 and Duke Nukem 3D. Just ask Mr. Rumble Roses. I got a feeling he's going to comment on this video whenever I upload it. I have a feeling he's going to tell you. And maybe if he's a nice guy, maybe in the comments section below, maybe he'll post a link where you can actually download the Duke Nukem Forever 2013 mod. And even in the comments below, maybe he'll even tell you how to work it. Because I lost my copy of the Duke Nukem Forever 2013 mod. It was on my old computer when I played it and put it up on YouTube. But for some reason, I lost it when my computer decided it wanted to crash. That was my old computer. This is my new computer. That was back in the day. But, anyways, when it comes to gaming versus, I usually talk about, which one has the better graphics, which one has a better storyline, which one has better weaponry, better feel. In this particular case, this is going to be one of those rare gaming versus episodes where I can't do that. It's just not possible, because while one lacks in one thing, the other thing makes it up for it. Like, for example, okay, Duke Nukem 3D had in-game music. Well, Duke Nukem 64 has split screen and co-op mode. So that's cool. And it even had the Duke matches. Duke Nukem 64 doesn't have a paralleled sky and displayed sky. Duke Nukem 3D does. But Duke Nukem 64 has more weaponry than Duke Nukem 3D. Which one truly is better? You can't really choose. But I think because of the in-game music and just the fact that this game in particular has the RPG and the Devastator and the Flamethrower and all that, that's why Duke Nukem 3D has a little bit more of a higher percentage of me liking it than Duke Nukem 64. Like I said, Duke Nukem 3D is my favorite Duke Nukem game. Then there's Duke Nukem 64, which is my second favorite Duke Nukem game. But it's like, this is Duke Nukem 3D right here, and this is Duke Nukem 64 right here. It's overlapping with my hand because it's that close to being my favorite. See, if I count a mod, Duke Nukem Forever 2013 mod is my favorite Duke Nukem game, if you want to count mods. Because it took, like I said, all the good things about Duke Nukem 3D and all the good things about Duke Nukem 64 and put them together. That's that. I can't choose between them like that. I cannot choose between them in this episode. It's just impossible. Because like I said, where one game has something, the other one lacks it, and vice versa. So I hope everyone enjoyed this episode of Gaming Versus. I'm going to try and do more episodes of this in the future. A lot of people have been sending me messages of me bringing back Gaming Versus as a main subject, because it was originally a side subject. And I've had to get rid of a lot of my side segments and subjects because they just weren't getting enough popularity. Like my Spades Delights, that wasn't getting enough popularity, but it's okay. It's okay. I'm going to go back to doing what I do best, you know? And please stay tuned soon for another episode of Gaming Versus, where I'm going to talk about some more games that is going to need a red carpet treatment with me. So, this is Onyx Spade. Thank you so much for watching. Like this video, comment, and subscribe. If you have any other if you have any requests on games of the same title or same type that you want to see on Gaming Versus, please comment below. I'd love to do some research for you guys. You know, but until then, this is Onyx Spade, and I'm signing out.